Today was a good day, a time capsule, if you will, a reminder of the kind of dignity and excellence, and most of all, hope that the American presidency and the American president used to embody to the country and, frankly, the rest of the world. As former President Barack Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama, all living former presidents with one notable exception, and too many celebrities to count, it looked like the Oscars, gathered to honor the opening of the Obama Presidential Center Museum in Chicago. The center will act now as a museum, an education and community center. It's a reflection of former President Obama's start as a community organizer, which, as one speaker said, is intended to serve as a, quote, hotbed of hope. The event featured musical performances from Jennifer Hudson and Bono and Bruce Springsteen and The Roots and Eddie Vedder and John Legend and Common. Legend and Common performed the song Glory from the 2014 movie Selma, a reference, of course, to President Obama's now legendary speech, the one he delivered on the 50th anniversary of the March on Selma, and a nod to the civil rights heroes who paved the way for the first black president in our country. It's a milestone that former First Lady Michelle Obama referenced in her very powerful, touching tribute to her husband. Watch some of that.
To do it all as a first, and the higher standard that comes with all that. The claims that a U.S. senator and constitutional law expert wasn't qualified for the job. The lies about your birthright, your faith, your patriotism. The outrage when you stated the biological fact that if you'd had a son, that he too would be black. Yet, you were unflappable at every turn, always focused, always calm, always looking at the long view. How absurd it is to even imagine that you might have buckled under the pressure even once, lashed out in frustration, lost your temper. How absurd it is to imagine that you might have done anything but make our family and this entire country proud. No, you were too busy. I'm not done, y'all. Not done. So much to say. You were doing the people's work, rescuing our economy, expanding health care, ending a war, ordering the bin Laden raid, saving an auto industry, winning a peace prize. Keeping us safe from Ebola, regulating the banks, standing up for marriage equality, listening to science, and comforting an entire nation in the face of unspeakable tragedies. And you did it all with such grace and class and cool that you made the hardest job in the world look like a walk in this beautiful park.
Michelle Obama also reminded us that during this era, where the people in power are trying to take us backwards, despair is not an option.
Hope is the essential spark that lights the fire of change. But hope is a choice. Voting is a choice. Being a decent human being is a choice. Believing that we still hold the power to build a country that reflects us all is a choice. The Obama Presidential Center is a living testament to the power of choice, y'all. The historic example that millions of you gave the world about what this imperfect democracy has strived for and achieved. And an urgent call to go out there and do it again.
Now, that was a point echoed by her husband, the former president of the United States, Barack Obama, as he paid tribute to what makes us all Americans.
The shared values that make democracy possible. A belief in the intrinsic dignity and worth of all people, and that no one is above the law or beneath its protection. A belief in checks and balances in our government and an accountability that comes with it, an independent judiciary and a robust free press. A belief that our military and law enforcement owe allegiance not to any president or political party, but to the people and our Constitution. A belief in the peaceful transfer of power after the people have spoken in fair and free elections. These are the values and traditions I believe in. And they are not Republican or Democratic values. They're American values we can all share, regardless of party. Values every president here today, as different as we are, has tried our best to uphold. Values that John McCain and Mitt Romney believed in no less than I did. It is our greatest inheritance, the story of America at its best, because it reflects a basic faith in the decency of our fellow citizens.
That message of hope and dedication to democracy during what feels like one of America's darkest chapters is where we begin today with some of our favorite experts and friends. Executive Director of Protect Democracy, Ian Bassin, is here. He served as Associate White House Counsel during the first 3 years of the Obama administration. Also joining us from Chicago today at the Obama Presidential Center, former Senator Claire McCaskill is here, and senior political analyst, host of the Runaway Country podcast, author of the Substack, How the Hell with Alex Wagner. Alex Wagner is here with us. Claire, you're there. How was it?
It was emotional. And the emotions ran the gamut, Nicole. It went at moments I was moving to the music with LL Cool J, who was sitting right across the aisle from me. And then another moment I was reflecting, how in the world does our country elect these two men, the same country? It was so stark and depressing in that way that this man and woman and their family led our country in a way that I certainly was proud of, and I think many Americans were proud of. There was no scandal, there was no lying, there was no grab for money. So that contrast, and by the way, Michelle Obama's speech, I have never seen anyone give a speech that without saying his name shamed the current occupant of the Oval Office, just by talking about how absurd it would be for Barack Obama to behave in the way that I think she was referring to Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think that people will study both these speeches for a long time, and that's why I kind of described it as a time capsule of this moment. I mean, the Obamas are always acutely aware of the moment in which they speak and how interpreted every utterance and every look will be. And she seemed to make some very careful and intentional contrast. Let me play a little bit more of Michelle Obama. This is number 3.
These folks aren't Americans too. They are America. They are the beating heart of this country. They are us, and we are them. And to ignore this simple truth, to refuse to respect the contributions and experiences of people who aren't exactly like us, y'all, puts us all at risk. Failing to see the humanity in all people puts us all on a slippery slope. And once that slide starts, there's no telling where it stops. A dangerous precedent that flies in the very face of our faith and of the founding promise of this democracy, that all of us are created equal, that each of us is a child of God with inerrant value, And no one, and I mean no one, has the right to sit in judgment of who's American enough.
Ian Bassin, I had a lot of thoughts about both these speeches, but man, Michelle Obama is, I think, speaking for millions of Americans in everything she said today.
Yeah, you know, I was in Iowa during the caucuses in 2008. I was there working on the campaign, and a family in Indianola, Iowa, put me up in their basement. I slept on a couch there beneath a banner that said Bush Cheney 04. It was a sign of the times when we weren't as riven and division by party, but we were united by what President Obama was calling us to, which is what we had in common.
Yeah.
And in that moment, one of the most overwhelmingly white states in the nation voted to nominate a man that they were judging not by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. And after Iowa, I was sent by the campaign to South Carolina. One of the more heavily black electorates in the primary season, where I was organizing people who lived on the barrier islands off the coast of the Low Country that had been centers of enslaved peoples prior to the Civil War. And I had volunteers coming into my office, carrying with them the deed that their great-grandparents had received from the Union Army when they liberated those lands, and showing it proudly to us in the office because they had been denied real opportunity, even in the modern era, to have a say in elections for who might represent them. And now we're coming out to vote for Barack Obama. And in the final days of that primary, an unfortunate suggestion was made that it wouldn't actually count that much because it was just going to be, quote unquote, the black vote that voted for Obama. And I can't tell you the degree in which that deflated the hopes of the volunteers who had worked for so long on it. And when Obama won that night, not just with the black vote, but with the white vote and the Asian vote and an overwhelming vote, I was in a little crab shack on St. Helena Island and with volunteers who'd come in from all over the country. And the coming together of people from different backgrounds and different parties in a belief about the best of what America could be was a pinnacle of my experience as an American in my lifetime. And I think it is telling that that feeling, that sense of hope, that sense of unity, that sense of optimism, that sense of the best we could be is something that has been so sorely lacking for the last decade. And there's something incredible about the timing of this event today, because it's coming at a moment when the country finally seems ready and hungry to turn the corner from the ugliness and divisiveness of the last decade. And how fitting that these two figures can come in at this moment and help us turn the corner back to the light that I think they pointed us towards 10 years ago, that I think we can reclaim and keep marching towards again.